Hey, Shane, just want to make sure you're dressed appropriately. He must be muted on his audio.
I can hear you back here.
I'm sure everybody else can hear me too.
Yes, David, I'm muted. I'm smarter than that.
Well, this isn't David, but I was just checking anyway, making sure that Shane was good.
Okay. Yeah. Oh.
And we can push it back. We used to do it at the end of the day, but then we'd be stuck out there and we get to shoot like headlights. And so now we do it in the mornings. So like during summer, it's not near as hot. So they do it at mid-morning with the girl safety. And then we go shoot and then come back and go through all the law, which is 4 hours.
Okay. You didn't see the heat raise deal, I think pretty much fixed it. We got light bars on there. We can go.
Hopefully next year we'll have electricity out there. And big lights up there.
There's
One
some,
thing at a time.
you're in the wrong area. It said there's no animals allowed in here.
Final offense to that.
You usually leave the heater on for the kids in the basement.
Or they see on.
All right, I'm good.
Yeah, I guess. you're
The
good.
rest are on their own.
Sean blocked my signal, so this one sat down. I got out of range on my radio.
Can you all see my screen and hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yep, we can hear you, Tommy, and see you, and see your screen.
Well, good deal.
Yeah,
How is everyone this evening?
good. You know, here in a couple of weeks, we're gonna play West Virginia. Us Wildcats. We'll see how much we like you after that game.
Well, we beat Oklahoma on Saturday.
Yeah.
Are we really talking football right now?
we on mute? No, we're not.
We are. Oh, we're not.
All right, we'll give it here just a few more minutes. We got a little over 100 people on here so far.
Well, if you have an in, Steve, with the Kansas coach, tell him to let WVU go up by about 28 points because WVU is known for blowing a lead in the fourth quarter.
Well, we seem to do some of the same things. We just hope it's the right game for us. All right. On my watch, we got about 5 minutes here. We're still picking up some people and then we'll get started.
I didn't know that there were this many people in Kansas.
There are, some of them are transplants probably. But like West Virginia, most of us are all related to one another. So
Can y'all hear that? I didn't think so. I'm trying to figure that out.
Well, Steve, that's how you know you're at a West Virginia wedding, whenever
How
everybody's
to
on the
get this,
same
how to
side of the
minimize
church.
this.
that's right. That's right. That's right.
Hey,
Oh, okay.
hey, Steve Hirsch.
Yes, sir. How are you?
Better not deserve. It's cold here in Louisiana.
Well, Ken, now I know who's there. How you doing?
Oh, not
I'm
bad.
all the way up on the computer. Is there a sound on this? These are all the way up.
Cool.
Man, they were
You know,
loud when I got them.
it's been kind of fun, Ken, watching
Sound on
that
There's no sound.
picture that you posted from Zachary, Louisiana. I think Tom posted it too, of the car in the middle
Oh
of the
crap, I
road.
didn't plug them in.
Okay, I was gonna say they're not plugged in.
Okay. 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 That's all right. They plug in right here.
All right, so before we do get started here, if I can get those of you who are not muted to go ahead and mute, except for Tom, because you're gonna want to hear him. Excellent, thank you for doing that.
Okay, so I went to city council. They weren't going to turn loose all of it. So they authorized me to spend no more than 9,000 on the tank and whatnot.
So whoever's talking about their city council, you might mute yourself out.
What's the reason why they're not going to turn loose all the money?
There you go.
Steve, if I could ask one favor,
Yes, sir.
if you could send an email, shoot an email to Carolyn and to Sarah and let them know how many people were on this webinar this evening.
We can. I don't know whether we're going to know the answer to that. I see there's 123 on right now, but we know, as I was kind of looking through the list, there's a number of them that obviously are in their meeting rooms, so they will have multiple people, and we'll talk about their rosters and stuff on that too. But so it might take us a little while. I mean, they're still counting ballots in Nevada, so it's going to take us a little while. So,
But I don't think it needs to be exact, but we're just kind of trying. I copied you on that email today where we're doing that thing with the National
Yes.
Science Foundation.
yes,
We're just trying to keep running tabs on the numbers for
Yep.
grant purposes.
I most certainly will get that to her, at least with the initial number, and then I can update it later. I know we still had people this morning who were asking to join, and we opened it back up so that they could do that. So,
Hopefully your Zoom platform will hold more than 100.
well, apparently, I think according to the secretary, who's also on here, so it'll be his fault if it doesn't. I think we can go up to about 300 individual seats. So we're gonna hope that works.
Right here under. There's a speaker and I just select the speaker. See the speaker or whatever for audio, TV. It works.
So we're going to give it another minute here and get, hopefully get everybody on. So we're going to give it another minute here and get everybody on.
Somebody's not muted. They're
That's
getting
me.
feedback.
Yeah, I think that's me.
No, it was where you were talking, then coming back through someone's speaker.
Oh, I see. You're able to still hear me, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. I see what you're saying. I was talking, somebody else was listening, and it was coming back through. I got you. All right, I have 6:30, so welcome to our first virtual offering for the State Firefighters Association. And gosh, I see 150 or so people on here right now, and I know a number of you are together in groups, so I'm pretty sure the numbers are going to be 250 or so, most likely by the time we tally up all those. By the way, if you are sitting together as a group and only one of you is logged in, we do want to get a roster from you and then get that to Zach, and that's going to be secretary@ksffa.com. That way everybody can get certificates for having attended this class. It is being recorded so that we will have this available. We're not sure exactly how we're going to distribute that yet, but we are recording it, so at least we'll have it available. If you have any questions, we'll try and keep you muted. But if you have questions, there is a chat bar down at the bottom, and feel free to put your questions out there. Because we want to try and handle as many questions as we can. Look forward to these type of virtual classes being offered by the State Association 3 or 4 times a year. Probably we're just now in the process of trying to put together a leadership class with a good instructor out of New York State. That'll be in the spring of 2023, probably in the February or March timeframe. Also, things that are coming up for the State Association, going to give you some plugs here. The Firefighter Relief Seminar is coming up on January 14th of next year in Salina. Make sure you're checking the ksffa.com website for information on that. Of course, our annual conference is in April. It'll be at Mulvane, so you'll have the opportunity to go to the Kansas Star Casino and attend the meeting in the meantime. Maybe get enough money saved up to be able to pay for your hotel room. Also coming up, this will be a live class at the Regional Fire School in Harrington, Kansas in October of next year. So this is quite a bit in advance, but we've partnered up with Kansas State University. They're going to do a grant writing class, and I would certainly make a note of that because I think that's going to be a great class, and it's certainly something that we've needed in the state for a long time. Also on the KSFFA website, we're designing our next challenge coin. And if anybody's interested in trying to help design that, go on the ksffa.com website so that you can turn in your suggestions for the coin. I am going to mention that I probably am a little hesitant about doing this because I hope I catch everybody here. I see that there's a number of officers from the State Association on here. Hopefully I catch all of them. I see our Southeast trustee, Mark Slater from Florence, our Northeast trustee, Laramie McPherson from up in Soldier Township, north of Topeka, Justin Callis, our Northwest trustee from Lucas, TJ Randolph, the Southwest trustee from Lakin, our treasurer, Dan Romine from Osage City, I believe is on, as is our secretary, Zach Golomboski from Garden City, although Zach's working shift, so he may have to leave. They've had kind of a busy day in Garden City with the snow down there. And also want to introduce Kylie Schilt to you. We hired executive director earlier this year, and that's why you're seeing more information from the State Association. Kylie's kind of the interim director, I guess, or serving as an assistant to the executive director tonight because Kathy is off, had another commitment, but it's great to have that company on board and helping us out with everything we're doing for the firefighters of Kansas. With that, let me introduce my good friend Tom Miller, who is he hails from West Virginia. He's been a volunteer firefighter for quite a number of years. And this is on electric vehicle safety. And I'm going to tell you, there probably isn't a more timely class that we could have, because we're beginning to see more electric vehicles show up, and that's probably not going to change over the course of the next few years. I will tell you too, not to pump him up or anything, but I've been in this business for 35 years. And we did this class in my department about 2 months ago, I think. It is the best class I've had in 35 years in the fire service. So I'm building you up, Tom. I know you won't disappoint, but welcome to Kansas again. Tom has done some classes for us out here, but welcome to Kansas. He's a good friend of the fire service, serves as director for the state of West Virginia on the National Volunteer Fire Council, and just an all-around good guy. So Tom, with
Thank you
that,
very much.
it's all yours.
Thank you very much, Steve. I welcome everyone. I appreciate you giving up a Wednesday evening to train. And it shows your commitment to your organization and shows a commitment to your community. I want to start off by saying, as I go through the material tonight, there is no such thing as a stupid question. It's just a question you don't ask. I will spend as much time, Steve will tell you, I'll stay on as long as you want this evening, even though we're an hour. I don't know whether it's behind or ahead of you, but I'm here to answer your questions. And a lot of the material we'll put up, hopefully will generate some questions. So having said that, let's move into the program. This was a joint program that was formed by the NVFC, and they partnered up with my state because we've been working with electric vehicles and hybrid vehicles since about 2004, 2005 at West Virginia University through an organization that was called the National Alternative Fuels Training Consortium. So we picked the ball up and kind of started running with it. And I'm the Hazmat Response Committee chair for the NVFC. And we're going to talk a little bit about this. Is a kind of a cross between vehicle technology, hazardous materials, and general rescue. The NVFC has a training model that's based on behavior, equipment, standards, and training. And one of the people that's on the call tonight, Ken Fontenot from the great state of Louisiana, kind of helped formulate this whenever we started this. We want to get fire departments and firefighters to focus on how they act and how they behave when handling incidents. We want to make sure they use the right equipment. We want to make sure that they're trying as best they can to meet the prevailing national standards. And toward that end, we want to provide the training to them. So, not going to spend a lot of time on this, but the goal of this program, this awareness program, is we want you to be able to rapidly identify an electric vehicle or a hybrid at an incident. This is mission critical because everything you do after that identification process is going to determine whether you have successful outcomes or just a nightmare. We want you to be able to assess for, is there damage to that hybrid or EV battery? We want you to understand that you're going to have to de-energize that battery in order to safely handle the incident. We want to make sure you avoid any potential thermal runaway, which can lead to other complications. And we want you to understand there's a lot of myth and mystery out there about, can you put these cars out? Can you put fires out? Yes, you can, but it takes special resources, and in some cases, a lot of resources. Now, I'm also going to tell you, we're not going to just focus on fire. We're not, because other incidents, including automobile accidents and vehicles going off the road into a ditch, can pose just as serious a problem. So before we get too far into it, let's talk about the history of EVs. They've been around for over 100 years. They were around before gasoline cars. They were cheap at the time. The only problem was there wasn't really a good battery. And as we all know, not meaning to be, too funny, but they really didn't have a long extension cord. So there wasn't really anything they could do. So, but they've come back into the forefront because of all the concerns about the environment and carbon emissions and things like that. And they're saying that 32% of car sales in 2030 and 45% in 2035 will be EVs. GM says by 2035, they're not going to make a regular vehicle. They're going to make an EV or a hybrid. That's it, period. They're not going to have internal combustion engines. So in looking at that history, there's been kind of a bell curve where it's continuing to peak the number of these vehicles that are on the road. They're coming up with new battery technology. I just saw an article the other day, and I'll forward it to Steve, who can pass it out. Audi just patented on Thursday of last week, filed a patent where they have a self-extinguishing battery. It's pretty interesting. The technology is ever evolving and ever changing. So what's a vehicle? A lot of people think whenever they think of a vehicle, they're only thinking about a car. And going across the country and doing these programs, I want you to think beyond that. I want you to think about electric bicycles, electric scooters, construction equipment. And I'm going to show you some examples of all that. You're going to have to not just think the incident's only going to happen on your roadway. What is lithium? Lithium's this chemical element. It is not found by itself in nature. It's an alkali metal. It's extremely reactive. If you took pure lithium, if you could get it, and put it in water, it would immediately start the water to boil and it would burst into flames. It has to be stored in its pure state in a vacuum because it is so reactive. A lot of people, you see things on the internet about, lithium mines and mining 5,000 tons of dirt to get X amount of lithium. What a lot of people don't realize is a lot of lithium that's used in batteries comes from seawater. It's distilled from the salt brine. So there's a lot of information out there. Yes, there are lithium mines. There's going to be even more of them up in the Wyoming, South Dakota area. But a lot of the lithium right now comes from salt water and brine water. So how does it affect us? It's in every part of our life. For us in the fire service, it creates problems with fire response, hazmat, all the stuff about quick clearance, being able to clean a road up in an hour. It creates different tactical situations and scenarios. If we roll upon a wreck with entrapment, or what some people call a pin, creates problems for the towing and recovery industry. But these things are in the automotive industry, and everything from a garage where they're sold through the mechanics that work on them to auto body shops to even school training programs, they're out there. In residential systems, they're used for battery storage, solar backup, energy storage for where people have wind turbines all over the place. There's commercial applications in public transit. The difference between a public transit, we'll talk about that. A public transit bus is the battery is overhead, whereas in a passenger vehicle, the battery is below. Different issues. They're in the construction industry and construction equipment all over the place. These things are just not in a Tesla. So, having said that, when you start talking about vehicles, not all EVs are the same. There's hybrid electric vehicles, which is, it has the capacity to plug it and charge, but there is an internal combustion engine, typically from liquid fuel. Now that may be diesel, biodiesel, alcohol, LNG, other stuff. Then there's what's called a plug-in hybrid electric vehicle. It has an extended range. It's got deep cycle batteries. It's used they pull power from the battery, or the drive wheels actually generate electricity as it goes down the road. There's an AEV, which is an all electric vehicle that's, has a deep cycle battery. It gets its energy directly from the battery. You got to plug it in and recharge it, just like a toy car or something else. You have to understand that a plug-in electric vehicle requires that long, deep cycle charge after the battery is drained. It's not going to charge real quick. It may require a 2-hour charge, 3-hour charge. They may have limited range, which is ever increasing due to technology, but there's different types. And I'm going to tell you why that's important. So, but again, they're more than cars. There's scooters, motorcycles, hybrid scooters, electric bicycles, ATVs. I just did an ATV search and rescue class this week, and one of the groups down there had a electric ATV. There's commercial buses. There's industrial applications like that forklift. There's construction equipment. That's an electric backhoe. And it impacts everything we do. There's not a part of it that's not touched by this. I've often got, been told when I do this course, we need to get law enforcement more involved. We need to get EMS more involved. We need to get more people from the towing and recovery. I agree. But we're at the NVFC, we're trying to push this out to the fire departments. And if anybody else wants to come, they're more than welcome. But this does affect everybody. So how does it affect your fire department? Have you done a risk assessment? Have you gone out into your community and seen the prevalence of these vehicles? And not just cars, go back to this. Have you looked to see how many of these are? Do you have a college in your town? Do you have high schools? There's a lot of people that are using these vehicles for transportation. Have you written SOPs or SOGs? We have draft SOPs and SOGs that we can get you for dealing with these types of incidents. Training, that's where we're at right now. Everyone's listening to this webinar right now is participating in training on it. Code enforcement. Does your jurisdiction, does your city, your town, your township, your county have codes that address EVs? For example, do you require an electrical inspection if you put a charging station in your house? Do you allow a school to have the students who ride electric bikes to school store the bikes inside the building or inside a stairwell? What about inspections? If your fire department or organization does inspections, do you actually go out and do you know what you're looking at? Can you tell what a lithium charger looks like? Can you tell what a lithium battery bank looks like? Do you do anything about safety and prevention? I've worked on a pamphlet that the NBFC will have that you can pass out at fire safety fairs to educate homeowners and educate consumers about the potential dangers of lithium, EV technology. And in terms of response, just put in the chat if you have responded to an EV incident, because it changes the game. It really does. Once you respond to one, it's completely different. And lastly, those of you that do cause and origin determination, can you tell which came first? Can you tell whether it was the electric vehicle that started the fire, or did the fire impinge on the electric vehicle and just escalate the situation? So it goes across the entire continuum of what we do in the fire service. Different types of lithium ion batteries out there. They're not all the same. I see Alan has a question. Alan Singleton. What's your question, Alan? Hello, Alan. Okay. We'll move on. Alan, if you have your question, can you put it in the chat for us? And we want to make sure we address everyone's questions. But there's different types of lithium ion batteries. A lot of people they think, it's just like AA's or C cells. There's a lot of different technology out there. The most common on the road is the lithium iron phosphate. It's used a lot in different types of vehicles out on the road. The lithium cobalt oxide is also pretty common. There's some little nuances to them about the lithium iron phosphate whenever it burns and the way it behaves. Um, one of the things you can tell the difference in them is the color of flames and the color of sparks that are discharged. But just so you know, there are multiple different types out there. So the major makers, there's what's a company called Cattle, Panasonic, LG. LG is the most common. They're in Fords, Renaults, Hyundais, Teslas, Volkswagens, everyone else. Everyone thinks Tesla makes their battery. Elon Musk patented the technology and then outsourced the manufacturing. Samsung is coming on real big now in the battery business. There's a company called SK Innovations out of South Korea that's doing different stuff in the more higher end batteries. But there's a major manufacturer coming into the US, which is what used to be the company called GNB. And they're opening up plants in Georgia and one in South Dakota that will be manufacturing domestic lithium ion batteries under a federal initiative started by the current administration. So basically, I want you to realize that what you're dealing with are a whole lot of cells that are hooked up in series. And of course, this class isn't about how to become an electrician, but I want you to see over there on the left-hand side of your screen, you'll see what a AA battery is. And then a lithium ion battery that's in a battery module. And it's called an 18605 cell or 14505, depending on the battery. But I want you to imagine that there's 7,000 AA batteries in that battery, in that complete battery cell. 7,000. That's the amount of energy you're dealing with. They're hooked up in series to generate the higher voltage. In commercial vehicles, there can be 24,000 cells. Some commercial batteries have 160,000 cells. So there's a lot of what we call potential energy in there. Again, here's a hybrid. You will notice there's an internal combustion engine down there that actually goes straight into the transmission. Then there's also an electric drive motor. These vehicles only have one transmission, but through a set of gearing and computer control, it switches from back and forth from the internal combustion engine to the electric motor and maintains the same RPM at the transmission. So here's a battery electric vehicle component. There is no internal combustion engine. I want you to pay attention to the orange cables that are at the bottom of the screen and over to the left. A lot of, when I go out and teach people, they say, what do you mean? There's more than one orange cable? Yes, there can be multiple orange cables. These are high voltage cables. There's not just one. There's also capacitors and other things that can store energy and rapidly discharge that energy that pose a hazard to responders. There's what an EV battery configuration looks like. This is from a Ford Fusion. You'll notice all the orange cables, every one of those orange cables is operating between 400 and 800 volts. They're going to different series. The ones in the back that are deep are what are called a stack series. But they're, again, all have the same principle. It's multiple individual cells hooked up in series. So here's another configuration. This is out of a GMC Yukon. Notice that it's stacked higher. Still the same internal stuff, basically, numerous stacked cells build up. So in addition to all this, lithium ion batteries, there's other technology that's coming out. Compressed natural gas, it's real big in UPS trucks, postal service vehicles, things like that. LPG, which is propane, another big one that's coming out. And down at the bottom, I want you to pay attention to is hydrogen powered. Hydrogen powered basically takes water, breaks it down into hydrogen and oxygen, and that generates internal combustion, but then it drives an electric motor. So it is a fuel cell to generate electricity to drive the vehicle. So there's still a lithium ion battery pack in it, just not as big as with other vehicles. So who sold the most of them? Everybody thinks Tesla. Well, actually Chevrolet's outsold them. But Tesla's keeping right up with them. And these numbers are even greater now. This is 2020 data. You know, we're now into 2022, so there's even more of these on the road. But just about every major manufacturer has electric vehicles on the road. So everyone talks about the voltage. Your normal internal combustion engine, whether it's gas or diesel, typically operates on 12 volts, 14 volts. But hybrids and electric plug-in hybrids, a hybrid, now that's one that has an internal combustion engine and a battery. They operate in the 100 to 200 volt range. Some operate as high as 350 volts. Purely electric vehicles, whether it be a plug-in electric vehicle, battery electric vehicle, or a PHEV, operate 400 to 800 volts or higher. Some as high as 1400 volts, 1100 to 1400 volts. Commercial vehicles operate at the higher voltage. These batteries can have 18 to 30 more of those parallel circle. Remember we talked about battery modules back here? That battery module, they could have 18 to 30 of those modules that are in that big square box that's at the bottom of the screen. That's a lot of energy. At the bottom, I put this chart out for those of you who have some knowledge of electricity and stuff. What is your electric bill based on? It's based on kilowatt hours, right? The electric bill for your house is based on the kilowatt hours you use in a month. Well, you need to understand that, you know, electric vehicle uses a lot of energy. You know, there's potentially enough energy in one of these vehicles to power a house for the day. It's pretty powerful. And where that poses a problem for first responders will become very apparent here later on in this presentation. So what are the risks? These things do catch on fire. They pose a problem as you're responding and dealing with the fire or potential electric shock from exposure to the high voltage components. The damaged cells can generate thermal runaway and they can start going off and exploding. Yes, they can explode. They pose dangers in the fact that, you know, a lot of fire departments where I come from, the typical response to a vehicle fire was one engine with a 1,000-gallon booster tank. And if you couldn't put a car fire out with that, you know, everybody made fun of you. Well, the problem with these is because of the stranded energy, you're literally putting the fire out multiple times. And lastly, a danger we're going to talk about further on in the program is the byproducts of combustion. And they're not just bad for you, they're flat out deadly. So, but it's not just fires. And everybody focuses on the fire part of it. You're more at risk responding to a motor vehicle accident involving a vehicle, the hybrid or an electric vehicle, than you are from a fire. Because once the battery cells are damaged, that's when they start misbehaving. You know, we're in the bad day business. And we were, you know, I did this class at NASA a couple of weeks ago, and a guy said, you know, you could literally take fire department off the side of the truck and put, you know, we respond to stupid people doing stupid things. That picture is of a Tesla that went sideways at 130 miles an hour into a telephone pole. There's 42 inches of intrusion on a passenger compartment. If you look just to the right, you will see the orange cable high voltage cable going to the drive motor. You will see in the picture, if you look very closely on the left, you'll see where a technician put wires in there to dissipate what's called the stranded energy that's in the was in the battery, to get the stored energy that was in the battery off of the battery so the car could be safely handled. So, like all aspects of emergency response, you need to know what you're dealing with. You got to look at how prevalent are these in your area. You want to look at call data. You want to just sit out beside the road one day, take a 3-hour period and see how many hybrids or EVs drive up and down the road. You want to look at construction sites. A lot of federal government construction sites, highway projects, other things like that, building prisons, anything where federal dollars are involved. There's now starting to be requirements put in that a certain percentage of the vehicles have to be electric. You want to look at industrial applications. Are they using electric forklifts? Are they using electric backhoes? Then you want to look at SOPs and SOGs. And again, this is a resource that the NVFC has that you can literally take and find the name, where it says your fire department here, find that, delete it, put your name in, and you have a basic SOP. If you don't like ours, feel free to develop your own. You want to look at training programs, build on this. We actually took this class and now we've built it into an operations level class where we actually go out, play with cars and stuff. We've done it in New York, Ohio, Virginia, West Virginia. We're going to be doing a modified version of it next year in Oklahoma City at the NVFC's training summit in June. We're constantly looking to get information out. If the state of Kansas wants a class, then you can contact Steve and we can work out the details on. You want to work with other key stakeholders. You want to talk to the cops. You want to talk to EMS. You want to talk to tow operators. You want to come up and plan events because you're all going to have to work together. The cops model of quick clearance may not work. You may not get the road open up in an hour like the federal government wants. EMS, they may, you may not be able to have the luxury of spending all this time to fully stabilize the car before you extract patients. And towing and recovery, your fire truck may need to follow the tow truck back to the tow yard until they drop the car. You want to look at your resources. There's mobile apps out there that have emergency response guides. There's technical guides. There's all kinds of resources out there that you can use to help build your training and build your knowledge base. So, having said that, if you learn nothing else from this program, remember these 3 things. You want to be able to identify the car, you want to know how to properly mobilize it, and you want to know how to disable it. And that includes disabling the car is not, just simply, making it so it won't run. You got to get that high voltage energy taken care of. So, identifying it. Well, the first thing is badging. There's keywords out there: hybrid, EV, Volvo XEV70, Nissan Leaf. As I tell people all the time, there is no national standard or no national consensus on how these things have to be labeled. None. There's no agreement among the manufacturers. So if the car's rolled 8 times in the middle of nowhere, Kansas, and you can't even tell it's a vehicle, let alone who the manufacturer is, chances are you're not going to be able to see badging. So the next thing you want to look at are the charging or plug-in ports. For those vehicles that have both an internal combustion model and a EV, such like a Chevrolet Impala or other things, a lot of times the charging port is where the gas cap filler is. So we'll open it up and look. The other thing is exposed cables. Are there bright orange cables or bright blue cables? Other brightly colored might be bright pink. The engine compartment's exposed. Does it say hybrid or EV or electric drive motor on it? EDM? What are these things you can look for? Again, there is no universal badging. There's no universal where the charging ports are. Nothing. Another thing is people say, well, if it doesn't, if it has a grill in it, it's a internal combustion engine. No, that's not true. Many of these vehicles actually have a radiator for coolant for the battery system, and we'll talk about that here in a minute. So there are certain jurisdictions like parts of Virginia, other urban areas where they take, because of the number of these vehicles on the road, they assume that every vehicle they're responding to is a hybrid or a battery powered electric vehicle until they know otherwise. You have to come up with your own response priorities and your own response presumptions. We can help you with that. You know, you can get a hold of Steve. I'll be more than happy to sit down and talk to you. But until you know what you're dealing with, you got to be careful. So one of the things you can do if the car's badly damaged is you want to look for potential battery damage. Are there cells on the roadway? This is a battery pack. It looks like a great big huge cell phone battery laying out in the middle of the road. They do separate from the vehicle. The battery compartments are typically made out of ABS plastic or lightweight aluminum. Some are titanium, but it's just laying on about. And sometimes it looks like Godzilla took 7,000 AA batteries and just threw them out in the road, and they're laying all over the place. Does that mean it's safe? No, it does not. Each one of those little cells has the potential to react or act. So other things you can look for is what we call body kinking. I don't know if you can see my hands. If the body's kinked anywhere behind the A post, between the A post and the last post on the vehicle, if there's body kinking or the roof's kinked, then you can assume that there may be damage to the battery. Impalement to the battery compartment. There's actually a documented case of a woman who ran over a deer and a deer antler went up in a battery pack and caused a problem. The car caught on fire. Fluids leaking from the battery or from the EV. Well, now we're not talking fluids leaking from the engine compartment. We're talking about fluids leaking from the middle of the car. Because like I said, some of these cars have cooling systems where they actually have antifreeze, ethylene glycol, propylene glycol that's used to cool the batteries. Wisps or plumes of smoke. And a wisp, I want you to think of a spiral, like kind of like a tornado. And I realize that's a bad word in Kansas, but it'll curl because if you've ever had, the art of reading smoke classes where they talk about the three things you want to pay attention to are volume, velocity, and color. Well, it's coming out under pressure. So there's velocity. There's not a huge volume of it. And the color is kind of an off yellow, sometimes a greenish yellow. That's a chemical reaction. That's a chemical leak. And down at the bottom, it talks about the presence of a fruity, solventy smell, kind of like really, really sweet apple cider, or like an off toluene or paint thinner type thing. That's because of the chemicals used in the battery. So that's what it looks like. That's a pulled back picture. You'll see a closer thing. Those are all those little AA cells that have ruptured from a fire. You'll see that once you see the close-up picture, you'll see that all the ends have blown out of the batteries from the pressure that builds up inside them. Those little caps on the end, like of a AA battery, the pointy part, that's internal heating inside the battery. That's what they look like after a fire. Each one of those little cells vents off. Now, if it retains pressure, you're going to see what happens here in a little bit. So we talked about identifying. Now let's talk about immobilizing. You want to chock or block the wheels. If you can, use a pike pole and turn the steering wheel towards the guardrail or towards a fixed object so the car is not going to run away. Because we're going to talk about these things have a bad habit of starting to move whenever things start shorting out. You want to set the parking brake, if it can be done safely. You use a pike pole, you reach in and set the parking brake. You don't stick your head or climb inside the vehicle. You got to realize you're over top of that battery compartment that could be reacting. In the operations level class, we teach people to do pull battery disconnect, set the parking brake, turn the steering wheel, put the car in gear, retrieve the keys, all that with a pike pole. Again, you can use a piece of rope. There's other things you can do to do this, but you want to do it safely. You also want to make sure you're wearing full PPE when you do this, because when these things go, they go quickly. So another part of immobilizing is make sure the ignition's off. Just because you can't hear it running doesn't mean it's off. Remember, these are electric vehicles. They're silent. They run silent. You want to get the key fobs away from the vehicle, 16 to 25 feet. You want to ask the occupant, hey, can you take your Apple Watch off? Can I have your cell phone? Take that stuff away from it, because there are people that can start their car with their Apple Watch, start it with their smartphone. Now, all these EVs, HEVs, PHEVs, straight EVs, they also have a 12-volt system. In addition to the high voltage, the 400 to 800 volt system, they have a 12-volt system. They have a 12-volt battery, just like a regular 12-volt battery. You want to make sure that you disable that too. You know, pull the hot post off. You know, disconnect it. There might be a battery switch disconnect. There could be 100 different ways. Some of them have you're allowed to cut the 12-volt system, but you got to disable that, because that in most cases disables the brain of the car. So, used to be told that you never, ever cut the cables on a hybrid or an EV. Well, some of the manufacturers now have what are called cut points, and they're clearly marked. You only cut where it is safe to cut. Now, you'll also notice that these cut points are typically not on orange cables or blue cables. You cannot cut them with a regular pair of wire cutters. You're going to have to use a set of cable cutters or a set of bolt cutters. Make sure that when you're cutting these cables, you're wearing fire gloves, not rescue gloves, because rescue gloves do not provide the arc protection. Make sure you're wearing heavy fire gloves. There's another cable cut. Here's a fire department cable cut on a blue cable. Pretty interesting whenever I first saw that, because most of the manufacturers tell you not to cut blue or orange cables. Notice that it's right above an orange cable. But these are where it's safe to cut. On newer Teslas, they have a thing that's basically like a parachute ripcord. You grab hold of the handle, you pull it, and it's a battery disconnect. It's in the front trunk, right up next to the brake fluid thing. It's a common location on Tesla 3s, other stuff. Started coming out around 2019, 2020, and just pull it out, and it it disconnects. Other disconnects for immobilizing. This is over on the left is kind of like a cam lock battery disconnect. You got to open the door and then pull it out. Same kind of in the center. It's just a more heavier duty type disconnect. On the right-hand side is a 2-prong plug that pops apart. Again, there is no universal battery disconnects. There's no universal cable connects. It varies from manufacturer to manufacturer. In the left there, you have a right-hand disconnect. It's at a right angle, pops up out. There's a safety clip on it. In the center, you see a blue medium voltage. That's the 100 to 200, maybe up as high as 350 volt 5-pin connector. On the right, we have another right-hand disconnect. Notice that it also has a cam lock on the top. That cam lock is pretty strong, so you just simply, pop it and move it. Sometimes it is secured with like a wire tie or a breakaway tie. Pops off. Here's another cam type battery disconnect that's located on the firewall. Again, the locations of these, there's no uniformity. Some may be located in the trunk behind a hidden plastic panel. Some may be on the firewall. There may be multiple disconnects on a car. It just depends on who the manufacturer is. It varies from place to place. So you want to make sure that you understand that these orange and blue cables contain a lot of electricity. Now, from Firefighter 1, we're taught the two things that affect electricity's impact on a human are A, the amount of current, and B, the path through the body. So if you're up there and you grab hold of one of these cables or grab hold of something that's energized, where it grounds, where you're grounded, like if you touch another piece of metal or you touch a little rescue tool, that's going to affect how how potentially you could be hurt. So this is why we always tell everybody, make sure you're wearing fire gloves, not rescue gloves, because the current will go through those rescue gloves. You never, ever, ever cut orange cables unless they're clearly marked where to cut, or yellow or blue medium voltage cables. You don't walk up and readily touch a submerged hybrid vehicle or an EV or its components until that vehicle's grounded. If it's in a ditch and in 8 to 10 inches of water or slid off into a creek, don't just walk up and grab it, because that water could cause a reaction inside the car and energize the car. The lack of engine noise does not mean the vehicle is turned off. Remember, we're used to hearing a car run. Electric vehicles, you don't hear them run. They run in silent mode. There's documented incidents of firefighters being injured from the car restarting and moving. These vehicles are capable of instant restart. You don't hear a crank, 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 crank. It's boom, it's on, and it's energized, and it's moving. I apologize, I'm getting a little bit of a cough here. So again, never ever cut hybrid EV or medium voltage cables. Just leave them alone unless it is clearly marked, and you only cut at the cut point where it's pointed at. So recent, in the last 6 months, there was the development of this device in Europe called the emergency plug. I went to a conference and saw it. And they were bragging about how it's the be all, it's the bee's knees for disabling vehicles, because you plug it in, the car thinks that it's charging, so it disables the drive motor and the drive computer. Comes in different models. They're about $750 a piece, and you'd have to buy one for each type of electric vehicle that you might encounter. And you'll notice over the little chart, it does this, does that, does this, does this, and a little green light comes on whenever you plug it in, so that you know that it is synced up with the computer and it's disabled everything. So it's just like kind of like a fake plug. Tricks the car into thinking it's plugged into charge and won't move. I said, this is a great thing. And then I asked to see the details on it. And they sent me the brochure, and you can look this up online. The link's down there at the bottom, and since this is being recorded, I'll provide Steve with the presentation so that you can take a look at it. Basically, it kind of says you can be killed if you try and plug it in, because the car may interpret it wants to start moving. I thought that was really funny. So I don't know, in Kansas, is this a job you give to rookies? I'm not sure, Steve. Is that how you handle it? You give it to the rookies and let them plug it in, or hey, Billy Bob, chase the car up the road and try and get this plugged into it so it moves. Make sure he has the right plug too. So you just make sure he fills up his bunker gear pockets and can chase a Tesla down. I just thought that was funny, because I always like to read the fine print. So any questions to this point? Anything in the chat? Anything in the chat? Okay. Okay, moving along then. Let's talk a little bit about vehicle fires, because that's the thing everybody's talking about. Fires, fires. We want to burn things. By the way, for you guys in the room, on the webinar, if you're with a truck company or you all have a ladder truck and you feel the urge to break something, go outside, grab some sticks, snap them, and then come back in. We'll be more than happy to let you come back in. For those of you who are chief officers, I apologize if I was talking too fast. I will talk slower for you, so you can understand. I'm a recovering chief, so I go to all the meetings and been in recovery now for like almost 16 years. A lot of people concerned about fires. It's very rare for a car to catch on fire in a garage just by itself. But not so rare whenever it's an EV. And we'll talk about one of the reasons for fires and why that's a problem. Basically, collisions cause the majority of fatal vehicle fires. People burn up before they can be extricated. And when you see how quickly these things burn and blow, it's pretty interesting. So again, number one cause of vehicle fires, collision with another vehicle. Number two is poor maintenance. And that's why these vehicles catch on fire inside a garage, is because the charging station isn't properly installed or they allow the vehicle to overcharge, which is also kind of related to the other cause there, electrical failures. With a pure EV, you don't have to worry about a gas leak. The engines on these cars can overheat. The electric drive motors can overheat. Vehicle battery damage, big problem with EVs. And interestingly enough, according to the IAAI, the International Association of Arson Investigators, a lot of people are starting to realize certain problems with these vehicles, and they're trying to, for lack of a better term, sell them back to the insurance company and set them on fire. There's a presumption that everybody's just going to assume that it's related to the battery. Well, I thought that was interesting. So here's some vehicle data.
There was a question there from Russell Fire Department about how you recommend handling a vehicle that's in the water.
One of the things that we're doing in the operations level class was we're talking about grounding the vehicle using either like a New York hook, which is an all metal pike pole, or clamping onto a set of jumper cables onto the metal parts of the car, not the plastic parts of the car, and driving our grounding rod in. We'll talk a little bit more about that here in a minute when we talk about it, but that's a good question. You want to ground that. You want to dissipate that energy off and make sure that it's going away from the vehicle. You don't want it just cycling around the vehicle. You want to direct it off of the car into the ground. We're probably, as we're continuing to modify this, we're going to show some people some examples of grounding the car. But good question. If I haven't answered it, please, stick around and I will come back to it, and I will spend as much time as you need to explain what I'm talking about. In looking at the data, you will notice that hybrids and plug-in hybrids, their fires per 100,000 vehicles sold is like 2 times that of a normal gasoline vehicle. 2 times. Battery electric vehicles, their rate of fires per 100,000 sold is really low. But the hybrids, and actually the most common fire thing from what I've seen from some data, is like the Ford Escape, some Priuses, things like that. But you'll notice that the rates of hybrid fires are higher than those of gasoline vehicle fires. So we're going to watch a video here from the National Transportation Safety Board. Little short video that talks about some of the problems that they've seen.
Hello, I'm Jennifer Homendy, and I'm a board member at the National Transportation Safety Board. Did you know that fire departments across the United States respond to about 170,000 vehicle fires every year? These fires are responders used to deal with fires in power, but if involving a high voltage lithium ion battery in an electric car can be challenging.
Hello, I'm Tom Barth. Over the last few years, I've investigated cars. The NTSB published a report describing the investigations that I worked on and the safety risks battery fires in electric vehicles for responders. Let me give you a few highlights of the fires we investigated. In August of 2017, an electric car crashed into a house and burned in Lake Forest, California. Firefighters had trouble extinguishing the fire. They poured thousands of gallons of water onto the roof of the car. They didn't realize that they had to direct water onto the battery compartment under the car, cool the battery, and stop the reaction causing the fire. This is called thermal runaway. Another challenge in Lake Forest was that the battery reignited while responders were winching the car onto the tow truck. New short circuits were created when the battery shifted, causing the fire to restart. The battery reignited once again at the tow yard. A crash in Mountain View, California created a risky situation, managing a high voltage battery fire on a busy freeway. It was a challenge for emergency responders to know when and how to safely move the car. And then, 5 days after the crash, the car's battery reignited at the tow yard. Firefighters were called to extinguish the fire. Even after the fire was out, the battery retained energy and was at risk of reigniting again. The manufacturer's engineers tried, but failed to remove the energy that was left in the damaged battery. This is called stranded energy. In Fort Lauderdale, Florida, a high voltage lithium-ion battery burst into flames after a car traveling well over 100 miles per hour crashed into a wall. While the wreckage was being removed from the crash scene, the battery separated from the car and reignited on the tow truck. At the tow yard, investigators confirmed the presence of high voltage and stranded energy in the damaged battery. A car fire in West Hollywood, California, shows us that a crash is not the only event that can cause the high voltage battery in an electric vehicle to catch fire. Here, an internal battery failure led to the fire. Firefighters quickly put out the flames, but they called the automaker for advice on how to stop the car from smoking. Firefighters were told to apply water to cool the battery, but where to apply the water was not clear. Guidance specific to each electric vehicle model is vital for emergency responders, regardless of what causes a high voltage battery fire.
These fires illustrate what we all know, that severe crashes or component failures create safety risks in any car, gas, electric, or hybrid. The NTSB identified two main safety issues in our report. First, while the emergency response guides from electric car manufacturers are adequate in some respects, they're lacking in others. For example, they contain almost no information about how to handle stranded energy. Second, federal safety standards don't address high-speed, high-severity crashes involving cars powered by lithium-ion batteries. Thermal runaway, battery reignition, and stranded energy are key safety risks in electric car fires. The NTSB's report details actions that the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, automakers, and fire and tow associations must take to protect our emergency responders. You can find the report on our website at ntsb.gov.
Tom, there's a couple more questions there. Kyler asked, what causes hybrids to have higher fire rate, battery placement, or heat from combustion engine?
It's kind of, you got to realize hybrids were around long before true EVs. So the technology is a little bit older. There's different theories on that. One of the theories is that the batteries have broken down over time and are more subject to the electrical shorts that occur with charging and overcharging and you know, the vibrations of going down the road. there is also the component of the transfer from the internal combustion engine to the electric drive motor, that there's problems there in that interface that cause surges, power surges, or what I call power spiking, that can cause the fire. There's also, you add, in addition to the batteries that heat up, you still have the presence of gasoline, motor oil, and everything else. So there's a lot of studies going on there. In fact, it's one of the things that we're going to be talking about at with the National Science Foundation. In fact, this Friday and Saturday in Alabama. So it's a good question. There's not a lot of clear data on what's exactly causing that fire. Just that the statistics clearly show they're 2 times higher, more likely to catch on fire than a regular internal combustion vehicle.
And then John Atkin asks, what are we grounding? The electrical potential exists between the positive and negative sides of the battery pack. There should be non-interaction with earth ground unless we have a way to ground both sides of the pack.
Good question. But the problem is that the battery shorts out and energizes the entire metal frame of the car. So you're grounding that because of either impingement on the cable or the car itself becomes a ground against the positive side of the battery. So you've got to discharge that energy to the ground so that you don't become the ground when you touch it. Am I answering your question? It's not just like a regular 12-volt battery where you got a positive and negative side, and as long as one is removed, you're good. It's not that way, because you have to understand is that once that battery, that lithium-ion battery, gets water in it, it starts a thermal runaway process. It's because the battery generates electricity through an electrochemical process. You're causing a runaway situation where it's just manufacturing massive amounts of electricity and energy.
And then a third question here from Alex says, how would you discard that energy?
Well, that's what we're going to talk about. Be patient. We're going to come to that. It's called dissipating the energy. That's what we're going to get into when we talk about de-energizing. Okay? You check with them and see if that's okay.
Yep. Move ahead.
All right. Good deal. So in addition to these things generating high heat, now you realize typical vehicle, when it burns, it's burning at between 700, maybe 1,000 degrees. When these things burn, lithium-ion batteries burn, they're burning at anywhere from 1,100, 1,400, depending on the compartment of the battery. They can be burning as high as 2,200, 2,500 degrees. Okay? At around 2,200 degrees, when you spray water on it, the water starts breaking down into hydrogen and oxygen. So in addition to the fire, these lithium-ion batteries give off high amounts of hydrogen fluoride, HF. Bad stuff. To give you an idea about HF is its permissible exposure limit, or PEL, is 4 parts per million, whereas hydrogen cyanide could be as high permissible exposure limits of 44 parts per million. Then there's phosphoryl fluoride. Now, hydrogen fluoride, when it comes in contact with water, becomes hydrofluoric acid. Phosphoryl fluoride, when it comes in contact with water, becomes phosphoric acid. Now, that's bad stuff. People are concerned, okay, now what do I got to do about the runoff? Is that bad? Well, it's like the old saying in hazmat, the solution to pollution is dilution. It's going to require you to apply so much water, so many copious amounts of water. In fact, we're going to talk about that here in a minute. 3,000 to 8,000 gallons on the battery for a standard passenger vehicle. You don't have to worry about the runoff, but you do have to worry about those gases. So you have to approach from uphill and upwind and make sure that you're wearing full PPE, including a positive pressure SCBA. Now, You see over there in the picture on the left, the guy's actually got a monitor. Most fire departments don't carry a monitor for detecting hydrogen fluoride or phosphoryl fluoride. But if you have a 4-gas meter, what you want to pay attention to is a decrease in the oxygen level, because these HF and PF displace oxygen. So if you're out in the open and your oxygen level is dropping below 20%, you've got a problem. You have the presence of something that is bad. So you don't want people to get enveloped in smoke. You want to stay uphill and upwind. And if the wind shifts and the smoke shifts, move your people. This is not like a car fire where a lot of people go up and aggressively attack it, and stick the nozzle in real close. Be careful of what you're doing. We're going to talk about using a TIC, a thermal imaging camera. These batteries are already heated. Their operational temperatures are usually like 140, 160 degrees, which is warmer than the ambient air temperature. So you're going to take that camera and you're going to pan back and forth across that battery cell. And if you see anything above 160, 170 degrees, you might have a problem. Now that hot spot may be the size of a golf ball or maybe the size of a softball. But once it starts that thermal runaway process, unless you get water on it and cool it, it will expand. And these batteries get into an uncontrollable self-heating state, and they just start building up temperature. They start ejecting gas. You'll hear them pop and vent. It's just like a pressure relief valve on a tank. They can vent so rapidly, you'll see shrapnel. They get really high temperatures. We're talking 1400, 2100 degrees. I've done several lithium ion battery burns. You're going to see pictures of one here in a minute. We were getting temperatures easily in the 1900 degree range, and we were outside outdoors and just burning a very small battery pack. These can vent so fast. We had battery cells leaving our simulated battery pack at around 540 feet per second. Some would fly as far as 100 feet. They put off a lot of smoke, and it's a very bright white fire. So what causes this? As the cells, your AA cell or 18505 cell or 16505, 14505 cell, as it starts to break down, it's an exothermic reaction. It gives off a massive amounts of heat, and then it's just a domino effect as it goes down. I want you to think about if you've ever felt your cell phone get hot because it overcharged. When I did this class in New York, in Westmoreland, New York, a guy came up and told me that a fire chief up there had a fire department pager with a lithium ion battery in it, and he put it in his pocket and then shorted out with the change in his pocket, and it actually burned his leg. Just think of that pager battery on a much larger scale. Other things that can cause the thermal runaway is overcharging, putting the wrong amount of voltage through it, because you put these batteries are just designed to charge at a certain voltage, a certain rate over a certain amount of time. There's things out there you can buy on aftermarket, rapid ready charge and jump charge packs and all this other stuff. Well, that battery's not designed for that. It's like Ohm's law. Ohm's law, is about resistance. Well, once you get resistance, you get heat. So the older the battery, the multiple charges and discharges, the battery actually breaks down. There can be external short circuits. And of course, high and low temperatures. Yes, extremely low temperatures like 35, 45 degrees sub-zero, just like an internal combustion car battery. You know how your car battery's dead whenever it's cold? These batteries, same, it just tends to be a lower temperature. So avoiding the thermal runaway, you got to de-energize it. How are you going to get that energy off the car? Every EV out there, every single one, Tesla, Toyota, Chevy, Ford, the Ford Lightning, all of them, Jaguar, all have an emergency response guide that tells you how to get the energy off the battery, how to discharge it. The problem is that emergency response guide doesn't tell you how to do that if the car's on its top sitting in the middle of Interstate 70. Oops, didn't figure that out. It's like everything else. It's designed to operate when the vehicle's in its normal conditions. We deal with abnormal situations. We're in the bad day business. So you can ground it, and there's different ways of grounding it. Like I said, using a metal pike pole into the ground. One of the things we did in some tests, we used a set of jumper cables and go into a piece of rebar driven in the ground. We were able to dissipate energy that way. But you're going to have to look at it and you're going to have to practice. If you've never done bonding and grounding, and I've done a lot of it with hazmat, fluid transfers and tank transfers and things like that, pretty familiar with bonding and grounding. But, how do you ground? You guys are out there in the farm country. What do you do to ground to get away from static? That's what I want you to think of. How are you going to discharge static? So take a look at what you got. It doesn't take anything fancy. Next, you got to cool. You got to get the water on the battery. It's just like when you're fighting a house fire. The shingles and siding on a house don't know the difference between rainwater and water coming out of a fire hose. Their job is to turn the water away. Same with the roof of the car. Same with the door skin of a car. You've got to get the water underneath the car. And we're going to show you how to do that and get it on the battery. Next, you're going to have to monitor it. That monitoring may take 30 minutes, may take 60 minutes. You want to monitor it with a thermal imaging camera to see if there's temperature spikes. You always got to approach uphill and upwind. You've always got to wear the full PPE. Now, what if I told you roll up on a Tesla car wreck that slammed into a telephone pole, you got patients entrapped, and you're going to have to do your extrication wearing full bunker gear and an air pack? No, I'm not being unrealistic. These things have the potential to spontaneously light off. It only takes a couple of seconds. There's videos out there you can watch. It's a matter of seconds from the time the initial pop and there's actually flame blowing. And that flame then has the hydrogen fluoride in it, the phosphoryl fluoride, sulfur trioxide, all this other nasty stuff. And you're going to all of a sudden now, no longer you're going to be playing around with crib blocks and everything else. You're going to be jerking that patient out of there and going. If you're going to put fire streams on it, you got to get it on the battery. And then you got to monitor for the indications of potential reignition. You've got to be prepared. So here's an incident in Delray Beach, Florida. Car hit road debris. They literally had to turn the car on its side to get water on the batteries to keep the thermal runaway down and put the car out. Had to tow it on its side. Stamford, Connecticut, they got 2 brand new buses. Oh no, this is a car fire. Sorry. We're going to talk about the bus one in Connecticut too. Connecticut just had an EV cloud over it. It took them 22,000 gallons of water to put a car fire out. 22,500 gallons of water. Now, I know you guys are in it, if you're like West Virginia, you guys are in rural areas, are you prepared to deliver 22,500 gallons of water to a vehicle fire? I get this all the time. What do you do on limited access highways? Well, set up tankers. Again, this is going to create a situation where the road may be shut down for a while. It also, you're going to have to look at, what is your response to a vehicle fire? What is your response to an auto accident where potentially an EV is involved? This comes back to your risk assessment. How are you going to change how you play the game? It's going to be tough. Each individual jurisdiction is going to have to look at it. We at the NVFC are more than willing to help you sit down and talk about it, but there's no one answer that fits all. Of course, Connecticut again, sorry about that, the bus fire. This was an incident. If you see, the batteries were up in the roof of the bus, not in the floor pan. These were brand new buses that came in. It was interesting because it occurred to brand new equipment, and it was in the charging. But look at the fire. It sent 2 maintenance workers and a firefighter to the hospital. Look at the damage to that bus. You gotta be prepared for these things. Again, here we see the battery cell after a fire. Take a look at that. A lot of heat, a lot of energy. So going back to it, yes, going to take 3,000 to 8,000 gallons of water or more per passenger vehicle. Commercial vehicles like buses, I've seen figures as high as 240,000 gallons of water. That's more than most people put on a house fire. Way more. Again, you got to pay attention to the toxic byproducts that are given off. Back here in West Virginia, it used to be a common thing for fire departments to use piercing nozzles on vehicle fires because you could pierce it through the door, you pierce it through the radiator, get water into the engine compartment, cool it down, get into the trunk without having to fool around with opening the trunk because the car was, that part of the vehicle was already damaged and blistered. Don't stick a piercing nozzle into a battery. That's just a bad day looking for a place to happen. Once the fire's out, use a thermal imaging camera to determine if there's temperature variances or fluctuations. Pay attention, monitor the situation. One of the tactics for getting water on the underside of the batteries is called a one-side vehicle lift. You can do this with a 24-foot ladder and a crib block. I don't know if Steve saw the picture on my Facebook page, but I told people we were going to pick up a car with a ladder. They laughed at me. You just build a simple lever, pick the car up, allows you to get the fire streams underneath. I've had a lot of people tell me, say, well, I'm going to use my hydraulic rescue tools. If you want to do that, you can. I'm a believer, keep it simple. Why am I going to put a $25,000 tool proximate to the fire to lift when I can use a ladder, keep my people 10 to 12 feet back, and if it all goes bad, I lose an $800 ladder as opposed to a $25,000 to rescue tools.
There was a question there, a couple of questions, one about foams and the other about encapsulators.
Okay, 2 things. There has been some success shown with F500 foam if it gets inside the battery. Otherwise, you got to realize this battery is encased in a cell. So you're putting foam on it. You're putting foam on you're not putting foam on what's generating the heat and what's burning. Standard foams, no, because what is foam made of? It's made up of water, air, and concentrate. Well, when the temperature gets above like 150 degrees, those air bubbles pop and expand, then you lose the foam. But you got to get the encapsulator inside the battery. You got to get it on the burning lithium. It's just tough to do. Everything I've seen was an exposed battery where they had success with F500. We're getting ready to burn 3 EVs. I think I copied you on that email, Steve, out here in West Virginia. And we're going to test F500 foam. There are, Rosenbauer has that $30,000 nozzle that they put underneath the car, and it goes up and pierces the battery and gets the water and stuff up inside the battery. That's where it's got to go. But that's a $30,000 nozzle. Pretty expensive. It's, this one-side vehicle lift is being adopted by a lot of fire departments. It's simple. You can use the tools you have. It exposes it and allows you to get the water where it needs to be. There's the steps
Nick,
for it.
Nick asked on here about the possible use of a cellar nozzle as well.
You could. But remember, a cellar nozzle or a Bresner nozzle is designed, you got to get it so that it's twisted. And I've seen a couple of people that have taken and modified a cellar nozzle and put a right angle on it so that they can get it underneath the car. Engineering. I saw one of those in Tennessee. Worked pretty well, but again, you still got to get the car up in the air so you can get the nozzle underneath. But they are, I was impressed with it. They had a guy weld up a right angle in a pipe and put 2 legs out on it so that the nozzle didn't tip. Saw it work pretty well. Nick, are you from Tennessee? Transplant to Kansas? With everybody on mute, I don't know if they're laughing at me or throwing things at the screen, Steve. I'm worried.
He said no.
There's the steps for the one-side vehicle lift. Remember, fire's present, use hose lines to push the fire back, just kind of, the 2 overlapping hose streams to push it back so that you keep fire and the smoke column off of the firefighters. Raise one side about 18 to 24 inches, put the hose lines underneath it and let them flow. Again, you still want to continual monitor with a thermal imaging camera. You want to cool them for at least 30 minutes and then monitor it during the tow operations. A thing that's becoming really big, and they're selling them all like hotcakes over here on the East Coast, are these blankets. They were developed in Norway. They're an envelopment blanket. You'll notice that some smoke does permeate through the blanket. It is more than a heavy canvas tarp. And the problem is they come in different sizes for different types of vehicles. There's a small for a small compact car, medium for medium cars. There's a large one for commercial vehicles. Yeah, there's training practices out there on how to put them on. But they're using them a lot in Europe, and they're becoming more and more prevalent in the US. The blankets are about $1,500 a piece. Interesting technology, because what it does is it redirects the gases back down into the battery. No, it does not smother it, does not take oxygen. It's not about taking oxygen out of the equation. It's about regurgitating the toxic gases to break down the chemical chain reaction that's occurring in the electrochemical reaction.
And somebody else asked if those were one-use blankets or whether they're multiple.
Actually, they're multiple use as long as you don't tear it. Actually, it's multiple use. It surprised me. The guy says you can use them 2 or 3 times. Multiple use. One of the drawbacks that I've heard from some guys in the Northeast is they bought 3 of them. It takes up a lot of space on the truck. They're bigger and a little bit heavier than a salvage cover. They take up space. So, but there are some on what's called the I-95 corridor. There's a couple rapid response trucks that have 3 different size blankets on them, but they are being used a lot in the East. Notice there's more red on the instructions on how to use these. Don't use a standard salvage cover because you'll lose your standard salvage cover and just waste a lot of time and then have to clean up a burnt salvage cover. You want to use the hose lines to push the fire back so you can work. It's got to be applied in a coordinated manner. It's kind of like the double-edged snap throw in Firefighter 1, and it's got to be coordinated. You don't throw the blanket over the vehicle. You drag it up over it. If you throw it, then the blanket's misplaced and people then got to get into approximate danger to position it. You actually monitor the outside of the blanket with a thermal imaging camera. There's actually a good video on YouTube that you can watch and you can see the temperature drop. Just goes from like 400 degrees centigrade, drops down to like 140, 160 and just keeps dropping. Pretty good video. I actually watched one of these deployed on a conventional vehicle fire, and it blew me away. It was very effective. Once the blanket's on, you don't move it. you don't apply water on it. You just leave the blanket there. And you just got to babysit it for 30 minutes to an hour. And then when you're moving it and towing the vehicle, you monitor it again for the potential indicators of reignition. And in some cases, they're putting the blanket back on top of the car while it's on the back of the wrecker. Pretty interesting. Then they have what's getting to be real big in Europe. What I like to call is, they call it the immersion method, but I call it the dumpster method. They come along with a truck, a boom truck that's got this dumpster on it, fill the dumpster up with water, pick the car up and drop it in the water. Done. Steve, where your good friend Marcel's from, Marcel Comp, that's what they're using. That's a German immersion tank for EVs. Again, it's up to what your jurisdiction wants to do to deal with it. New York has got 4 of these. FDNY's supposedly got 4 of these, and they're actually call out to salvage their sanitation department, because they're the ones who are experts at hauling dumpsters, and they're using these. Any questions? I don't have a complete slide on the tactics of it, because all it is basically picking the car up and immersing it in water.
Yeah, Ken had asked whether or not departments ought to be considering, if they're gonna fight these kind of fires, whether or not they ought to be adding some extra cost to the insurance carrier or whoever.
That is a decision you have to make. There is someone did a presentation at FDIC who I gather basically told everybody you should just let these things burn. That is a call you have to make. All right. I can't advise you one way or another. The issue you have is, can you leave a road shut down for 9 hours, 12 hours? Because that's how long some of these take to burn. What do you do if there's exposures? You're either going to have to put the car out and apply water to that, or you're going to be prepared to cover that exposure for 9 hours to 12 hours while it burns. What do you do if there's a body in the car and it's wrapped around a tree and it's burning? Do you let the car burn? It's a simple solution, but then whenever you start throwing in the what ifs and the contingent scenarios, the question isn't so simple. Does that make sense to the person who posed the question? Steve, did it make sense to him?
Yes, it did.
Okay. I hear this all the time, and it's a tough call.
There was a follow-up on that too, was if you do that, are there any concerns about the water being discarded that's in the dumpster itself?
Yes, the water on a dumpster method is a hazardous waste, because it's not sufficient to dilute it. But if you're flowing 3,000 to 8,000 gallons of water, yes. In this thing right here, there's only probably 1,800 gallons of water. Think of the size of one of your portable dump tanks. They're 2,500, 3,000, 3,500 gallons. That's not even half full. And because you got the car in there that's occupying space or volume. Yes, that would be considered a hazardous waste. Notice also on there that they put a foam blanket on it to prevent anything from off-gassing out of the water. The foam is a vapor suppression. Prevent anything from off-gassing out of the water. No gas is coming off. Good question. But it's not just fires. Again, you're at risk of electrical shock during technical rescue incidents. If that battery compartment has been damaged, take a look at it. It's whether it's got ruptured or impinged cells, the battery's upside down. Again, just like hazmat, all of the safeties on these vehicles are designed to operate when the vehicle is in the upright and locked position. Well, we get vehicles that are not in the upright and locked position, and that's when they cause a problem because they're not designed to work that way. Those battery cells come loose, they short out. If the battery compartment is punctured by guardrail bolts, tree limbs, road debris, deer, you've got a problem. If it's immersed, if the battery compartment's immersed in water, being in a ditch or in a flood situation, cross grounding can occur. There was an article about after Hurricane Ian in Daytona where they took all these cars to a parking lot and they spontaneously started combusting. And at one time, the fire department down there was dealing with 13 electric vehicle fires across a parking lot. It doesn't take an ignition, an external ignition source for them to go bad. If they're immersed in salt water, it's worse because salt has corrosive, higher corrosive properties. When I did this training for Ken Fontenot's folks down in Louisiana, you know, they have a lot of brackish water, you know, that's, you know, a cross between regular water and salt water. And they get, you know, they have a lot of hurricanes down there and tidal surges and things like that. And that water is very corrosive to these, and this does not work and play well with these batteries. So
There
you
was
gotta
another question there, Tom, about, I don't think it was on here, but he texted me about just burying the car. But keep in mind, this is coming from a guy who's the sexton at a cemetery, so he knows how to do this.
Well, the problem with burying it is remember, these things are generating an exothermic reaction, electrochemical reaction. So you're not gonna suppress it by burying it in dirt. It's not gonna work that way. Sorry, you're just gonna have smoky dirt. I saw a test video where they dumped sand on a test vehicle, and what they ended up was smoky sand. It doesn't work because you know, it's like the old theory. I don't know if you've ever seen the old thing where you take a jar and you put golf balls in it, and they say, "Is the jar full?" No. So they put smaller pebbles in it. Now is the jar full? No. Well, then they put sand in it. You know, it'll take sand. Well, the problem is you're not going to get into all the little voids on the car where there could be air trapped, and it just takes so much to allow this thing to start. And once it starts, it escalates so quickly with the heat. No. And can you come up with, you know, 120 tons of sand, or can you come up with 3,000, 8,000 gallons of water? Because you'd have to bury it about 8 feet deep.
Well, then there was another question about how you're going to detect that the car is actually energized, whether or not you need to be carrying some type of equipment, a hot stick or whatever, to determine whether or not the car is energized.
Excellent question. You can use a hot stick. I have actually seen a hot stick light up. Touching we're doing a test thing with a Prius. I saw a hot stick light up on it. If you have a hot stick, that's one thing you can do. But what I'm telling because a lot of fire departments where I've taught this class at don't have hot sticks. I'm just telling them to assume that it's energized, and we show them a couple real quick ways of de-energizing the car and grounding it. My favorite one's a New York hook, metal hook, and you make sure you anchor metal to metal, and you know, take your boot, drive the once you hook to the car, anchor it into the ground. But good question. If you got a hot stick, I've seen a hot stick just light up on a car. And again, they're not that expensive. Sometimes the local power company will provide them to. Now, you all have a lot of electric cooperatives out in Kansas. Maybe the electrical cooperative will buy you one.
Yeah.
Um,
I don't think it's the right person.
But we want to make sure you wear full PPE. Again, stressing using fire gloves because rescue gloves do not provide sufficient arc and grounding protection. Always approach from uphill and upwind. And you want to make sure that you're looking to see, you know, if you see a whole bunch of AA batteries on there, grandma didn't spill her camera, you might have a problem. Look, see if it's, you know, the car is fully immersed or partially immersed in water. And again, assume or presume the chassis energization. Special situations, if a patient's entrapped, you may need to get that victim out of there really quick. Grab and go. You're not going to have time to do all this vehicle stabilization and everything else. Now, one of the things a lot of people talk about is someone's not on mute. I'm getting feedback.
Yeah, I think that's coming from Sean. I don't think you're muted out and we're getting your radio traffic feeding through. There were a couple other questions here, Tom. One was, good question, if you run out of water, how long is it going to take it to burn out? I think that's the question I asked you when we did the class too.
They can burn for as long as 9 to 12 hours.
And then the other one was, does grounding it work if it's completely submerged?
If it's completely submerged, typically it's grounded into the water. I'm not a scientist. I don't play one on TV, and I didn't stay at a Holiday Inn Express last night. The engineer that I talked to is what you're having is what's called transfer flow energy. The battery is shorting out, and the electrical system is charging the stuff that's above the water. But the problem is that if it's partially submerged, you may only have plastic in the water that's allowing it to ground. There's enough water getting into the battery, but it's not enough to ground the car out. If it's totally submerged, 9 times out of 10, it's grounded. The problem is once you get it up on land and it starts draining, if you still have stranded energy in the water, then it becomes a danger once it's up on the ground. So don't assume that it's completely safe and all the energy has been dissipated or discharged from the batteries simply because the car was totally submerged. Once you bring it up on there, it's just like a regular 12-volt battery. 12-volt battery going underwater is grounded out. Problem is once you get it up there, you can still get shocked. So that's an issue. Did I answer your questions?
Yeah, I think it does, Tom.
Okay. So again, going back to patient entrapment, a lot of times when we're doing stabilization, we like to use our rescue struts and our rescue jacks, and they're talking about, you get purchase points if the car's on its side, or, blah, blah, blah. Be very careful where you place those rescue struts because you don't want to put them into the battery because now you've created a potential short circuit. If there's a fire and the responders or the patients are exposed to smoke, do not treat it as smoke exposure. Treat it as a chemical exposure. And you're going to have to talk to your medical command and look at your medical protocols. This is not where you give someone high flow O2 and all things are going to be good. With hydrogen fluoride and phosphoryl fluoride and sulfur trioxide and some of these other chemicals, what happens is as soon as they breathe it in, you get what's called rapid onset chemical pneumocystis. They start drowning in their own fluids. So you want to look at NFPA 473 or your local protocols for a chemical exposure. Hydrogen fluoride exposure can be extremely deadly. When they were testing flammable refrigerants at Underwriters Laboratory, they killed 2 scientists from hydrogen fluoride exposure. This stuff's bad. Again, vehicle stabilization, one of the things we were taught in auto extrication is you flatten the tires. Well, you drop it lower to the ground. Well, the problem is if you drop it lower to the ground, is you run the chance of bringing the car closer to the ground where the car can arc to the ground, creating a problem. You want to haul these things when they're towed on a flatbed. And you want to put some kind of protection between the car and the aluminum bed of the wrecker. A lot of places around here, I know our local tow operator is a great guy. Chris Reed runs Charleston Auto. He put a piece of mining belt down on the car on his wrecker bed, so that he pulls the car up on a great big rubber mat, so there is no chance of arcing or crowning. You want to make sure that the battery cell doesn't fall off the car, as you saw from the NTSB video, you know, and now you got two problems: the energy that's in the car and the battery cell. Oops, now I got two problems. You may want to have to follow the wrecker back to the wrecker yard until they unload it. They may have to store the vehicle away from other vehicles in case it catches on fire so it doesn't burn up their whole lot. We tell people around here, and I tell people, I've done some training for the National Tow Associations, don't park them inside. You know, if the insurance company wants it stored inside, you know, because it's a Lexus or a Mercedes or a Jaguar, make sure they know they may be buying the whole building. You know, there's a lot of places, and, you know, certain vehicles, insurance companies, you know, will pay for inside storage. Well, you may be paying for a structure fire. That's a reality. Again, that stranded energy that's in the battery, you've got to get rid of it. And again, the emergency response guides talk about how to do that: pulling the battery disconnects, grounding, different processes. You know, sometimes they'll send a technician out to deal with that. It just depends. Some tow operators have had people that have been specially trained to deal with stranded energy. And again, remember, as we know with electricity, there's, you know, and again, I'm not an electrician, is, you know, is it the volts or the amps? You know, what kills you? Is the volts or the amps? Well, that all depends on the resistance and how it's being generated. You can get a direct and indirect shock. That stranded energy can cause that thermal runaway. You can have the fire completely out. 30 minutes later, all of a sudden the battery starts heating up because of the electrical chemical reaction inside the battery. And then you have reignition. Other special situations, whereas we said a passenger vehicle had 7,000 cells, here's a hybrid van, a GM model, it's got the equivalent of 12,000 cells. It's going to take more water if it causes a problem. Here's one that has 24,000 cells. Big problem. Even bigger problem coming up. The whole bottom of that bus is a battery. It's the equivalent of about 6 EV car batteries. So 42,000 cells. And my favorite, fire trucks. There's a program out there through the EPA called the National Clean Cities Program. And there are federal grants out there for cities, towns, municipalities, counties to buy electric vehicles, including emergency response vehicles. That's why Los Angeles bought theirs. It wasn't because they were trying to be some kind of super clean city. They got a federal grant to do it. The city of Charlotte, North Carolina, is building an all-electric fire station. I've got towns around where I live here in West By God, Virginia, where they have electric police cars. And the running joke is you don't have to outrun the cops, just run farther than their extension cord goes. These are out there. They're all over the place. You got to be prepared to adapt. Your problem can be compounded if you have multiple electric vehicles involved in an incident. There's an incident, a video that I have. I'm trying to get the permission to use it, of a car carrier that's carrying a bunch of electric vehicles, and one of them starts catching on fire, and it builds up until other ones, and the police are letting cars on the interstate go by this car carrier until one on the bottom rack literally detonates. And when it detonates, it's big. And all of a sudden now, oops, now we got to shut the road down because we got a problem. There's incidents where, what if you got a parking garage? I don't know if any of you all have parking facilities. What are you going to do on a dense parking lot like a Walmart parking lot or a Dollar General store parking lot? How are you going to get 3,000 to 8,000 gallons of water on scene? Do you have mutual aid agreements, automatic aid agreements? You know, you're going to have to look at your response jurisdiction. How are you going to monitor these situations for 30 to 60 minutes whenever, you know, the highway patrol or the state troopers are wanting you to get the road open, or the deputy sheriffs are wanting to get the road open? What are you going to do in the middle of the winter when, you know, you got 6 to 12 inches of snow on the road and this vehicle's burning in the middle of an interstate? Are you going to are you going to shut the road down and have people stranded out in the middle of a snowstorm? I don't know. Again, post-incident things, make sure they're towed with a flatbed. If there's any kind of kinking of the battery, the reason why you don't use a wheel lift is because when they pick the front wheels up, they may break the car and break the battery compartment. All of a sudden you got batteries all over battery cells all over the place. Or you generate rapid thermal runaway. All of a sudden the vehicle breaks on fire when it's hooked. When they're towing them, starting to see research that says, don't take the metal hook from the cable on the winch on the wrecker to hook into the tow hook. Use a tow strap so that there's an insulator in between the metal cable and the wrecker. That way, if during the tow process, if there is a short circuit, you don't energize the wrecker due to an incident. I'm trying to get more of that information on that incident so I can get it pushed out to people. Don't want that battery coming in contact with the metal bed of the wrecker. Tell them whenever they store the vehicle, don't store it in a great big puddle of water. Keep it away from other vehicles. Make sure when you talk to your dispatch and they send a wrecker out that you're advising them that they're coming to pick up a hybrid or an EV. Have a real quick educational pamphlet. The NVFC has one that we can get to you that you can put out about avoid, you know, let us know if there's smoke, fire, arcing, any weird smells. You know, advise the insurance adjuster when he comes to your lot to use caution when around the vehicle. You know, be careful. Be prepared to implement personnel, tool, or equipment decontamination if necessary. You know, the solution to pollution is dilution. Hose it down, scrub it down. Again, going back to identify, immobilize, and disable. Remember those three things. We've got some information on that. Can get you handouts. Steve can get them distributed to all the fire departments in Kansas. The new thing you're going to love are these fast charging ports. I added this. They're coming out with these rapid chargers. Again, they're selling them. I've heard nothing but bad things about them. Be careful. If you start seeing these, there's certain places that are, you know, they're basically, they put a credit card, you put a credit card in and they'll rapid charge your car. And probably create an incident for the fire department. There are now wireless charging stations in certain cities coming to a town near you. Just like you can charge your cell phone wirelessly, you can now charge your EV wirelessly. What happens when the car catches on fire on top of this high energy that is buried in the ground? Remember how we, you know, how do you deal with the down power line? Well, what do you do whenever the asphalt's energized? Whose asphalt is that? It's a joke. That's a West Virginia joke. I heard a collective groan all across Kansas. Again, other wireless charging systems.
There were a couple other questions here for you, Tom. The first is there some place where the manufacturers have put together any publications about their discharge processes or
Yes,
frankly,
they're
where the wires are at, all that stuff.
every electric vehicle out there, NHTSA, the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration, requires that they have what's called an ERG, just like your DOT ERG, the little orange guidebook, yellow guidebook. Every EV and hybrid EV and PEV out there has its own emergency response guide. You can download them on the internet. There are currently each ERG averages between 90 and 135 pages. There are currently 230 commercial models of hybrids and EVs sold in the United States commercially. There are another 100 to 100 plus custom models. So if you wanted to be fully prepared, you would be downloading 25,000 pages of documentation. Now, there are apps on your phone where you can download, or on your tablet, that will tell you everything you need to know about that vehicle, where the disconnects are, how much voltage is in it, where the cables are, where the disconnects are, how to disable the charging plug, how to disable the key fob, all that's in there. But that's something you're going to have to train on and play with. That's why you do your risk assessment. So you find out what you have the highest, what is your greatest frequency of what's going through your area? Is it Teslas? Is it Toyota Priuses, Chevy Volts, Chevy Impala hybrids, Ford Lightnings, Hyundai EVs, Volvo EV70s? What? But there are emergency response guides out there that give you all that detailed information.
Then another question, we talked a little bit about the, dropping the car in the roll-off container and filling it up with water. This question was similar to that, is how concerned do you have to be with the fact that if you're just pumping that much water on a car out in the open with the runoff being contaminated?
You don't. 3,000 to 8,000 gallons of water is going to be enough to generate enough dilution of the hydrofluoric acid or the phosphoric acid that you're not going to have a runoff. 3,000 to 8,000 gallons of water will take the acidic content down to less than what you get from acid rain. Any other questions?
That's it for the time being, Thomas.
Well, that's all I have. I'm willing to stick around if anybody has any questions.
Well, let's see. There was one other question here about how long it would take to discharge the batteries.
If you're grounding it, 3 to 5 minutes.
Okay.
If you've got a good ground and you've truly got the vehicle energized, it will dissipate its energy in 3 to 5 minutes. You want to measure on true bonding and grounding. You want to check your ohms, which your resistance. You want less than typically under 800 ohms of resistance, and take 3 to 5 minutes to discharge the energy from the car. When we did some test grounding, we discharged a fully charged Toyota Prius in about 4.5 to 5 minutes, got it down to safe levels. We had another commercial electric vehicle, a forklift that had some pretty deep cycle batteries. It took about 9 minutes to discharge it. I saw a question down there that said if there's a specific app. No,
Right.
Each manufacturer has its own app. Some manufacturers have a generic app like Kia. Others you have to download not only for the manufacturer, but the specific make and model of the car.
So there's a couple other questions there, Tom. You're probably seeing them now about using dry chem to put the fire out.
Nope. dry chem is basically interjecting sodium bicarbonate. It's designed to break down the chemical chain reaction on a fire, on a class A, B, or C fire. This is a completely different chemically based electrochemical reaction. Dry chem is not going to do anything. I saw a question down there about what do you do about if the car is partially submerged in water. The way you ground it is you find, like I said, you find solid metal on the car. If those of you that are familiar with the New York hook, you make sure that you get a good, bite into metal and stick the straight end of the New York hook in the ground. If not, you take another method of doing it is take about a 4-foot section of rebar, slam it in the ground, drive it in further, and take both ends of a set of battery cables, put it on the rod, and then make sure that both ends of the other cable are on metal on the car.
And there was a question there about whether or not these are similar, I guess, to solar batteries that a home would use.
They're exactly the same. That is a great question. In fact, certain manufacturers of like Solar Hauler and some of these other people are using recycled vehicle batteries, because once the vehicle battery gets below its capacity to retain a 70% charge, a lot of manufacturers are recommending they be replaced. And a lot of batteries are being replaced under warranty. So they then take that battery that only holds 68% charge and it is recycled and used as a home energy storage system battery. That's a great question. In fact, one of the people that is actually marketing that now, if you remember, if you've seen some of the commercials for Ford Lightning, hey, in a power storm, you can go out there and hook your Ford pickup truck up and power your house. Yeah.
Yeah.
The whole topic, and we talked about this in Wilmington, Steve will tell you, is the whole thing is now going away from lithium ion batteries into what they call energy storage systems, whether it's in a vehicle or it's in a house or it's in a commercial application. It's a hot topic right now. NFPA actually in the 470 technical committee that when we were meeting in Newport News earlier back in September, there was actually talk about labeling electricity as a hazardous material. And that would have started World War III in the fire service. So great questions.
Yeah.
Any others?
Other questions there from anybody? Appreciate all of the positive comments about the class. I'm sure Tom's seeing all those things.
I'll answer any questions you got. You guys are a great bunch.
Well, Tom, we certainly want to thank you for taking time out. I know it's a busy schedule for you and doing this. How about contact information for you as well?
Yeah, if you want to email me, my email is real simple. It's tomfirerescue@msn.com, TOMFIRERESCUE@msn.com. No dots, dashes, or underscores. Or you can reach me at through Steve. His email, if I am allowed to give it out, Steve,
Sure.
is the one that I use is nbfcchair@gmail.com. Or you can contact the National Volunteer Fire Council at their website through their chat or through Volunteer Voices, and we will answer any of your questions. We'll shoot you out sample SOPs, SOGs. We'll shoot you out little checklists you can use. It's all free. Kansas is a proud member of the NVFC, and that's what we're here to help you. No charge. We don't charge you. There's no cost for anything like that. We, it's about keeping you all safe. We have some tools and resources. We're more than happy to get out to you.
And just as a reminder, this was recorded tonight, so we're still trying to figure out exactly how we're going to distribute that. But
yeah, someone has a question down there about batteries and RVs from Audrey's iPad. Audrey, I'm answering your iPad, so you'll have to work it out with them. But yes, there are a lot of RVs. I don't know if you all know this. Spartan, which also makes fire trucks, is one of the largest manufacturers of RVs. There are some large battery cells in a lot of RVs. There are also RVs that have solar panels that are built into the roof. So there are some, yeah, you want to be concerned about when you roll up on an RV. If you see a solar grid on the top, or sometimes they'll have a sun signal up above the door going into it, it'll look like a sun. That can be a clue to tell you that there's a large lithium-ion battery pack on that RV. Great question, Audrey's iPad.
And Tom, there was another question there about whether or not there was any movement to try and get some standards such as battery disconnect poles and the like.
Yes, there is a lot of movement on that. There is a great, oh, someone had to shoot the Go K-State in there. Mountaineers. Do you all have a song like Country Roads? You know, Q Country Roads? No, you guys beat the crap out of us in football. That's not even, that hurt.
No,
I
we're
want you
hoping
to know
to do
that
it again.
that hurt my feelings. But I'll get over it. Yeah, there is a standard. We did a Facebook, the NVFC did a Facebook Live event. And Joe Tebow from the DOT and other things are trying to get the manufacturers. There's a lot of pushback from the manufacturers. And, you know, I can understand some of that, you know, one of the manufacturers, so you're going to tell us what kind of logo we're going to use on our vehicle, and you're going to tell us what we got to do this. So now you're getting into, instead of, is it truly a safety thing or is it an aesthetic thing? You know, are you going to make us label our car a potential bomb? No, there's a lot of pushback, but there is a true effort to try and get some kind of consistency and some kind of uniformity. But Steve will tell you on a, and I hope you'll agree with me, Steve, on a federal level, sometimes it takes 5 to 10 years to get
Oh, yeah.
any kind of legislation moved anywhere.
If even that.
But all of the fire service organizations, the NVFC, the IAFF, IAFC, and everyone else is pushing for some kind of regulation and some kind of uniformity. Where we'll move with that, I don't know.
Yeah, and for the rest of you on here, again, if you were doing this as a department training exercise, we'll make sure that you get your rosters to secretary@ksffa.com so that we can record all of them. I would tell you that just looking at the numbers here, I would guess we had about 300 firefighters on statewide, and that's a great credit to you guys that you were wanting to learn about this, and that's a tremendous outpouring of firefighters for our first ever virtual class. And I don't know how we could thank you enough, Tom, for giving up your time and doing just a super job of helping educate our firefighters here and keeping them safe.
Well, you guys have, again, we're here, as Steve will tell you, it's about firefighters helping firefighters. This is not about, Steve will tell you, this is about helping you guys. We want to make sure that everyone's safe, and we want to make sure that you're operating with information, you're facing the challenges with knowledge. And we started this program because of you, the firefighters across the country, not just Kansas, but other states who wanted the information. And we took it upon ourselves, and I don't know if I was blessed or cursed, but having worked with this so much and helped develop programs for West Virginia University, home of the Mountaineers. We took our program and turned it over free of charge to the NVFC, and we're running with it. We're doing these webinars. I'm doing one on Wednesday night for the great state of Wyoming. Done them in New York, all over the place. And that's what it's here for, to get the information out to folks.
Well, I'm hoping, Tom, that with 300 firefighters, we beat everybody in terms of numbers.
No, I hate to tell you.
Oh.
The one we did for ESIP, of course, now it was nationwide, but I got to count you as nationwide since you got Mr. Ken there from Louisiana.
Yeah.
We had like 784 on their webinar.
Oh, well. Well, let's put it this way. We had 300 quality people on ours,
Oh, okay. Yeah.
including
Even-
including Ken Butno.
Well, Ken counts as 3 because
I think
he's
so.
a pretty sharp guy. He's
He
a pretty
is.
sharp guy. Although I do have to take away because of the girl or whoever shot the K-State Barb in there to completely gut me like a fish. That really hurt. You know, here I am giving up my evening and someone had to just literally fire that barb. You know, that hurt. I'm crushed, Steve.
Well,
I don't know if
yeah.
you see me with the tissues here. I mean, it's just,
I was a little surprised when you said it had hurt your feelings because I only have one left. So I thought maybe you only had one.
yeah.
Tom,
Does
thanks
anybody-
again.
Does anybody else have any questions?
Looks like we're good. I think we're going to sign off. Again, thanks to everybody, especially to Tom.
Again, thank you all. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your commitment to your communities and to our nation. And even though you may be responding in a little small fire department in Kansas, you're part of a much bigger family. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart, and I'm very grateful. And I want you to please make a commitment to be safe. And again, if you have any questions, get a hold of Steve or your members of your Kansas State Firefighters Association or us at the NVFC, and we'll do whatever we can to help you out.
Thanks, Tom.
Take care. God bless you all.